2018 edition of the College of Business and Technology's Black History Month Executive Speaker Series. I'm Tom Erickson. I'm Dean of the College of Business and Technology. And as you know, diversity and inclusiveness is integral to the culture of EKU's campus and, in fact, the world. As we prepare future business leaders who will be leading very diverse businesses with very diverse workforces in the future, it is really integral to what we do in the College of Business and Technology. We're pleased to present this year's CBT Black History Month Executive Speaker. For the series, the college brings leaders of business, industry, and government to the EKU campus to address students, faculty, and community members on current topics and issues in career progression and the like. Our partner for today's events, by the way, is the Richmond Chamber of Commerce, and we'll be joining them at a luncheon later today. We're honored to have EKU alum Mr. Emmanuel Bailey, President and Chief Executive Officer of DC09 LLC in Washington, D.C. as this year's executive speaker. And here to introduce him, we always have a student do the introduction. Students do a lot better job than deans anyway, introducing. We know how that works. Anyway, here to introduce him is Mr. Jackson T. Davis, one of our very, very best business seniors in the Department of Management, Marketing, and International Business. Well regarded as a scholar athlete from Lafayette High School in Lexington, Jackson was a highly sought after recruit. He was a runner-up for Kentucky Mr. Basketball and transferred to EKU from Butler University last summer with a proven athletic and academic record. And he quickly became captain of the Colonel basketball team. As a family-oriented man, Jackson said that he was looking for the right fit, and EKU felt like home. It is home. Along with being a leader on the floor, Jackson is already proving himself in the business world. Jackson has traveled abroad, completed summer internships, and started his own business. During his internship, he shadowed investment advisors at his family's firm, which provided the opportunity to gain hands-on experience, hands-on and experiential application of classroom learning, the things he learns here applied in business. As an entrepreneur, Jackson recently became a Mary Kay beauty consultant with relatively few male consultants in the industry. He sensed a market opportunity. As he says, it's like any other business. If you have the drive and passion, you can be a success. On track to graduate in May 2019, Jackson plans to play basketball professionally, and after basketball, he looks forward to a career as a financial advisor and giving back to his community through volunteerism. There's little doubt that Jackson will achieve both his academic and professional goals. Now, what would you do if you won the lottery? Jackson says that he would buy Star Wars stuff. Sounds good. I was thinking maybe donate back to EKU, but Star Wars stuff sounds good. Anyway, Jackson, thank you so much for joining us today. Please join me in welcoming Jackson to the podium.
Mr. Bailey is what being a colonel is all about. He received his bachelor's degree in management from here at EKU. Then he went on to get his MBA from the Smith School of Business at the University of Maryland. He currently serves as the president and CEO of DC09, the world's second largest gaming systems operators, and is currently the only minority to hold such positions. Before going into gaming system operations, he was Senior VP and Chief Operations Officer for Capital Structures Management, Inc., a full-service construction management company. He also served as VP and Chief Diversity Officer for Fannie Mae and Branch Officer for Citizens Bank Corp. In Maryland and DC. It's safe to say he's a very accomplished man and a positive role model, not only for us minorities that shoot for the stars, but for every student who understands that success is a state of mind. And without further ado, I introduce to you Mr. Emmanuel Bailey.
Can you guys hear me? Hello? Well, I tell you what, Jackson, I am incredibly impressed with you. And the fact that you are starting your own business while you're still in school tells me a lot about you and your dad. Let's give his dad a round of applause who's sitting with here. Because I like to talk about leadership, and that's a wonderful example of leadership. By the way, you can see my skin tone here. I think I need a little, some of your products that kind of help me here. It probably would cost me too much to make this better, but listen, thank you. I'm so glad that all of you are here and getting up early, and I know that's tough because I know you guys all have classes today, but you wanted to spend your time with me today, and I so appreciate that. But I want to say first, thank you to the College of Business and Technology, Dean Tom Erickson. Let's give him a round of applause. Coming here, you've done just a tremendous job. And watching the growth and development of this university, and particularly in the College of Business and Technology, is really amazing to watch. I wish you were here when I was here. But let's just say thank you so much for him to be here. And to EKU President Michael T. Benson, what an amazing job this individual has done in just 4 short years. But most importantly, I want to thank all of you, the students of EKU. I was here, I sat in that seat, I know what you're thinking, I've been through what you've been through, so I want to give you guys a round of applause to thank you all for coming here. I would be remiss if I didn't mention my colleagues who got up at 2 a.m. so that we can be here today. And they actually think they're going to have a day off, but we're going back to the office when we leave here. Sorry to give you guys the bad news, but we've got things to do. But let me first introduce Vivian Bird. Stand up. Vivian does all of my marketing in the lottery business in Washington, D.C. And Katie Jew, who is like Mensa level smart, so much smarter than me. I'm so blessed to have her on my team. Katie Jew, thank you for being here. And last but not least, Jim Spiro. And Jim's been working with me for, 20 years now or so. So Jim, thank you. You should get an award for being able to deal with me through all of that time. But really, I'm very humbled and honored to return to my alma mater, and spend some time with each of you today. I'm uniquely proud, and Dr. Benson, and for you, Dean Erickson, I really want you to hear this. I'm just proud of the fact that you guys would take the time, and Sharon Townsend, who I spent many a phone call with, who convinced me to come here today. Thank you, Sharon. Let's give her a round of applause for doing that. But your efforts to recognize Black History Month in this nation, and not only for what you're doing here at EKU, to recognize the long fight for equality by people of goodwill, both Black and white. Now, I'm going to tell you a little history here. And I think it's important. I believe that everyone in this room should know the 2 most important names, in my opinion, in the history of EKU, particularly as it relates to African Americans. Not only on this particular campus, because I came here in like 1984, but the colleges and universities in the entire South. And tell me if you've heard these names. I doubt that you have. Andrew Miller, who was the first Black student to attend EKU in 1956 in the graduate school, not in the undergraduate school, but in the graduate school, 2 years after the Supreme Court's decision in Brown versus the Board of Education. And also Dr. William Francis O'Donnell, and he was Easton's president from 1941 to 1960. Now, despite the fact that it was literally illegal for Blacks to attend colleges, white colleges in the South, in Kentucky particularly at that time, due to what's called the Day Law. Now, how many of you have your smartphones here? Millennials, I'm sure you all have it. I want you guys to look up the Day Law while I'm speaking. And coupled with the fact that the EKU Board of Regents were strongly in support of segregation at the time, Dr. O'Donnell leveraged the Brown versus the Board of Education decision to convince the Board of Regents to admit Andrew Miller in 1956. Can you imagine that? imagine the personal and professional risks and sacrifices actually made by both men to achieve what must have seemed like an absolutely impossible task. The level of fear, and you'll hear me talk a lot about fear as I go through my presentation, that had to be overcome by Andrew Miller to stand literally in the face of intolerance and ignorance. And for President O'Donnell, people forget about what he had to deal with, to literally risk his career, to advocate not only for Andrew Miller to be admitted, but for any black student to be admitted to EKU. Folks, I will tell you this, and I believe this with every fiber in my body. No one has ever accomplished anything great alone. Yet here we sit today with you, Dean Erickson, celebrating Black History Month at EKU. These two committed, highly intelligent people of goodwill deserve both our admiration and our appreciation. As Dr. King once said, we cannot walk alone. So to President Benson, Dean Erickson, Ms. Townsend, to the Board of Regents, and to the EKU faculty, thank you each for all of your efforts and what you had to go through to diversify and celebrate diversity and inclusion here at EKU. I'm so uniquely proud of what you guys have done. It's an honor for me to be here. Now, Ms. Townsend, who bent my arm and told me I had to come back when I was wavering because of all the stuff we have to do day to day, and actually flew up to see me. So that's when I knew I had to come, because I didn't think I had a choice at that particular point. But she asked me to talk about, as well as Dean Erickson, to talk about my personal story. And that's a little difficult for me. I'm not a person that typically talks about my individual background and what I've done. But I'm going to deputize you all in the cone of silence, and I'm going to tell you my story. So hopefully I won't see this on Twitter tonight. I'm just joking. But before I begin, the most important and critical thing that I need to tell you, you heard my bio and everything I'm going to tell you today, but what's most important that you need to know about me is this: there is nothing special about me. Let me repeat that. There's literally nothing special about me. I was born with no special advantages. I'm not smarter than you. I am not smarter than any of you in this room. I had no special relationships, connections, access to capital that what is and will be available to each of you. But what I did have, and I pray, and I believe that you do, each have, is a praying mother. You know, as Oprah recently said at the Golden Globe Awards, everyone has a story. And she's so right about that. Everyone has a story. So I'm going to spend some time telling you mine. Stop me if you heard this one. So I came to EKU, as Sharon and Dean Erickson, as I told you earlier, to pursue a sports dream, much like yours. Mine didn't work out. But I was also running from an area that would become known as the murder capital of the world. And for a very brief period, was the murder capital of the United States. I came here with no money, the product of a strong and loving single mom, with 2 kids to raise by herself. My mother divorced my stepfather for a reason that I don't want to share with you right now, when I was 9 years old. And she was literally on her own. I never knew my biological father. And in fact, to this very day, I've never seen so much as a picture of him. However, what I did bring with me to EKU, the most important things that I believed that I needed, all of which were instilled in me by my mother. And we like to refer to these as the 3 Ps. Now, I ask you to take out your smartphones, right? Everyone has one, I'm sure you do. And you would honor me if you write these down. I think they will help you. Here are the 3 Ps. Purpose, preparation, and perseverance. Perseverance. I'm going to spend some time telling you about each. Purpose. What is your purpose? Direction and purpose are absolutely essential in life. For example, and you've all experienced this, would you get in your car to go to a particular destination and have no clue as to why you're going? I don't believe that any of you would do that. In other words, what is your why? Why is it important for you to be here at EKU today? What are you trying to accomplish? And for whom are you trying to accomplish it for? Let me tell you about the day that I realized what my why was. I remember the very day. I was 10 years old, in fact, and we had recently moved from a very heavily crime-ridden area in southeast Washington, D.C. And Dean, we were talking about Silver Spring earlier, just north of the city. And this was the largest housing development. Some people call them projects. I like to use the term development. That development had 1,100 units and over 10 buildings, making it the single largest apartment complex development in a county of 502 square miles with a population of over 1 million people. And when I tell you nothing worked in these buildings, nothing worked. Not the heating system in the winter, not the AC in the summer, at least not consistently. The building had been in bankruptcy about 3 or 4 times, and in fact, at one point, the state had to take it over because of the conditions in that building. Now, oftentimes in the winter, when it would get so cold and we didn't have heat, we had gas ovens. So imagine a building, 11-story, with thousands of residents, and everyone has on their gas ovens all day and all night. What in the hell were we thinking, right? Can you imagine the explosion that could have happened there? By God's grace, we were safe. In fact, there were 11 stories, so all of them had elevators, and none of them worked, and they weren't safe. No one dared, absolutely no one dared to use the basement laundry room, not only because for fear of your safety, but if you didn't stand in front of that washer and dryer where your clothes were there, you would need to buy those clothes from a guy who knew a guy later that day. Now, I got to tell you, during a rare period, this was a very rare period, when my mother was unemployed, but she was still paying rent, still supporting 2 kids by herself. She made us an early dinner, which was very, very unusual, because she typically didn't do that. My sister and I were walking down this long hallway to our apartment. We were coming home from school, and we could smell what seemed like fried pork chops, baked bread. I mean, this was stuff, French fries, stuff that you would ordinarily have at Thanksgiving. And we were just totally confused. I mean, this was April. It couldn't be Thanksgiving. Needless to say, our reaction to that was similar to any hungry kids coming home from school. We ran like hell trying to beat each other to the front door so that we could get to the dinner table. Now, when we got inside the apartment and sat at the table, we noticed that the table was actually prepared and sat as if it were Thanksgiving. And we asked our mom, what's going on? Is some special news that we need to know about? Some good news? Tell us what's going on. In fact, her only reply to us was, get tearful when I think about this, just because I love you both very much. We thought about that, and it seemed very odd, but our reaction was equally simple. Cool. So my sister and I, we proceeded to literally eat like pigs. We were so stuffed, but we kept eating and eating and eating. And as the meal continued, what dawned on me was that my mother was actually not eating. So I said to her, Mama, and yes, I called my mother Mama. Anybody got a problem with that, let me know. Why aren't you eating with us? She quickly responded that she just wasn't hungry and she'd eat sometime later. Now, I thought about this because it seemed very, very odd for us. That wasn't a normal dinner. But you know what I did? I proceeded to eat every pork chop, including the last pork chop. And I wasn't even hungry at that point. I was just eating. You know this feeling? You're just eating because it's there, and it wasn't something that we were accustomed to, so I continued to eat and eat and eat. And guess what? That night, I had the worst stomach ache I've had at that point in my life. As I walked down the hallway, because I couldn't sleep, I had to go to use the facilities, I noticed that the lights in the kitchen were on. This was 2 o'clock in the morning. Why were the lights in the kitchen on? Had someone broken into our apartment? Were they in there raiding our refrigerator that really had nothing in it? So I walked closer. And at that moment was when I noticed my mother. And she was standing on a chair, looking into empty cabinets, looking for something to eat, anything to eat. And I began to cry. I felt so guilty for eating all of the food and for being so selfish. I ran to her and I grabbed her and I said, "Mama, I'm so sorry for eating all the food and for being so greedy." And with tears in her eyes, she hugged me tightly and she said, "Baby, don't worry. Everything will be okay. Everything will be okay. I just want you to be happy." This woman sacrificed her most basic of needs solely for our pleasure. That was the day that I learned my why. I vowed that very day at 10 years old that I would never, ever allow life to mistreat my mother or my family again. Now, the next morning, when we were leaving to catch our school bus, I noticed Mr. Smith, and I noticed him every morning at 6:45 a.m., but this day was different. Mr. Smith was easy to notice, not only because he was the only white man that came to our neighborhood every day, but because he was so friendly. He spoke to every kid every morning. He knew not only our names, but the names of most of the parents. In fact, he would say to us every morning, "Good morning, kids. How's your day going? Have a blessed day." Now, we called Mr. Smith Old Man Smith, and he was probably like 21, 22 at the time. But you know, when you're 15 or 16, 20-something feels like an eternity. But he was doing what he did every day, which was delivering newspapers all over our housing development. Now, I noticed Mr. Smith every day, but this day was the first day that I noticed what he was actually doing. And what was he doing? He was making money. Now, with the picture of my mom indelibly burned in my memory, standing on that chair, looking into empty cupboards, I said to Mr. Smith, "Hey, Mr. Smith, do you deliver all of these papers and these 10 buildings, 11 floors? You do this all by yourself every morning?" And he said, "Well, yes, I do, young man." So I smelled an opportunity at that time. So I said to Mr. Smith, "Could you use some help, like in the mornings before I go to school, maybe after school, maybe on the weekends?" And he looked at me very strangely, very oddly, and the only thing he said to me, "Son, let me think about that one, and I'm going to get back to you." Now, the next day, guess what he told me when I asked him again? He said, "I'm still thinking about it. Give me a moment, and I'm going to get back to you." I got that same response from Mr. Smith for about 2 weeks. So one day, just one day, as I was coming home from school, I heard a man's voice in my apartment. Now, that was very, very odd, because as far as I knew, I was the only male in the apartment. So what did I do? I opened the door as quickly as I could. And when I entered, Mr. Smith was sitting there talking to my mom. He saw me and he stood up and he said goodbye to my mother. And then he turned to me and said, "Son, see you at 4:30 a.m. down in the lobby." And I looked at him, I said, "What?" He said, 4:30 a.m. in the lobby, 4:30 a.m. sharp. You see, what's the point here? Mr. Smith had told my mother that he had to be absolutely certain that I was serious. When you graduate from this university and you try to get a job, you may have the same degree as someone else, but what's going to differentiate you is your level of effort and how serious they think you're going to approach that job. So once he knew that I was serious, because he needed to know I was serious because he had a wife and 5 kids of his own that he needed to take care of. So he wasn't going to risk his business for someone who wasn't serious. Then he asked my mom for her permission, and of course she said yes. Now, he agreed to pay me, and I know you millennials here, and what's the generation after millennials? What is it? Z. Z. He agreed to pay me $25 a week, which was a fortune at that time. And if I worked for him for a month without missing a single day and doing a good job, he would give me $50 a week. And this was an absolute fortune back in those days. I worked for him for about 2 years, averaging about $200 a month. Now, I later learned that my mother's rent for a 3-bedroom apartment, now think about this, 3-bedroom apartment, big rooms, was $575 a month. So you may ask, what does a 10-year-old do, and I was 12 at the time when it was all over, with $200 a month? I gave every dime of it to my mother, with the exception of $5. Okay, that was my fee, that was my tax. And you might want to know why I had that tax. Well, back in those days, there was only two things that I really cared about. And I know that none of the students have heard, at least of the first one, and probably 90% of the faculty haven't heard of the second one. Topps baseball cards. You ever heard of Topps baseball card? The one with the big sugary gum in the back that if you bit into it with your teeth, it'd break a tooth. They were only 50 cents, and we would trade them. And the other one, which is still my favorite to this very day, Reese cups. The big ones. They had the big square ones back in the day, and they were only 25 cents. So life was good for me, and I was all set. Now, you remember the pork chop story that I told you about? Well, what I didn't know about that particular day was that my mother had received a final eviction notice on her door with a notice to vacate the premises immediately. Literally, my mother was expecting at any moment during that dinner for the county sheriff to walk in to our apartment, throw us out, along with all of our belongings, as we had all too often seen with our neighbors and friends. Mom simply wanted her kids to be as happy as possible as she prepared us for the worst possible. And what's my point in this? My point is this. We all have the power, no matter your station in life, where you're from, what university you went to, and the ability to make a difference when you know your purpose. Based on God's grace, I was able to retire my mother in 1997. She hasn't paid rent or a bill or a car note or a mortgage since. And she's actually quite good at spending money at this point. So I feel uniquely blessed to have gained my purpose because God revealed my why to me so early in life. Having purpose gives you direction in life. Having purpose gives you a clear sense of where you need to go, and most importantly, what it will take to get you there. Now that was purpose. Let me walk you through the second P. Who remembers the second P? Preparation. Wow, Dean, these kids are amazing. Now I believe, this is one man's opinion, that one of the most important factors that will ultimately determine your level of success, however you define success, is being prepared for it. That's why you're here, to get prepared. If you're not prepared, leave now. Now let me tell you about my preparation. And it's true. It started right here at EKU. I can literally trace the roots of my ability to focus, my ability to learn, to work under pressure and tight deadlines, and importantly, my ability to make sacrifices. That's what you got to know. You got to make sacrifices in the here and now for an unknown and unseen future benefit. Now, as I'm sure all you students know at this point, getting prepared is hard, right? Getting prepared for an exam or a test, that's difficult. Very difficult. And it's not fun. Getting prepared means making sacrifices. Now, let me give you an example, as I mentioned earlier. In the fall of my senior year, and I think I was telling Sharon that story earlier, I carried 21 credits. You guys know about taking 21 credits? That's a lot of credits, right? And I had to get permission from the student counselor to take all of these classes because 2 of them were prerequisites that I needed to take simultaneously. Why would anyone in their absolute, his or her right mind, want to take 21 credits one semester and 18 credits the following semester? Now, my counselor actually warned me against doing this because he thought I would fail. In his view, it was far better for me to simply accept the fact that I would need to delay my graduation and wait another year. And as I listened to him tell me this, and I'm sure he had good intentions, I thought, I don't have another year. I need to get home. I got to get back to DC. I've got to help my family. So I literally begged this counselor to approve the waiver that I was going to need in order to take this course load. And he looked at me very intently. I'll never forget this. And then he asked me, Emmanuel, do you understand the level of sacrifice that you would need to make to have any conceivable possible chance of passing with 21 credits? And he stunned me by that because he was right. And I thought about it, and here's what I said to him. I said, sir, I only know that nothing is more important to me than graduating. So he looked at me, and I think it kind of stunned him, my response. And he said, okay, but if you drop one of these classes, if you don't have at least a 2.0, you will not be allowed to take the course load the following semester, which is make this whole exercise an utter and complete waste of time. Now, what do you think my reaction was? I was shocked he said yes. I couldn't believe he went for it. I was so happy that he said yes and that he would allow me to do this. But my happiness lasted for about 5 seconds when I realized what the challenge was in front of me. Because you see, at that very moment is when fear hit me. Fear hit me. How could me, possibly be successful taking all of these classes back to back? I'm not smart enough for that. I don't want to make that kind of sacrifice. I don't even know where one would begin to do that. How do you prepare for that kind of workload? I had no clue, absolutely no clue. But more importantly, I was literally afraid. So the next day, I gathered all my course syllabi. You guys didn't catch that. I used a plural form of that word based on my stellar EKU education. Thank you. And then I went to the Crabb Library. And while I was reviewing that syllabi, I overheard a librarian helping a student prepare to write a final paper for what I thought was a finance course. And I was so impressed with her level of patience, given the question the student was asking. I was impressed with how detailed and knowledgeable she seemed to be. So I waited, and I waited, and I waited for her to finish with that student. And when she finally did, I was kind of nervous to go up and talk to her. It's a little different here back in 1984. But when I did, I went and asked her for her help. And without hesitation, without asking me a single question, she agreed to help me. Now, when I showed her my 21 credit schedule and she could see the obvious fear on my face, knew that I was really concerned, her immediate response was, and this was shocking to me, you can do this, Emmanuel, but you must be prepared. You must be organized, and you must be fully committed to this. Because if you're not, go back and drop every single one of these classes right now. I was shocked. She never even asked me why I was doing this. But let me tell you what she did do. She spent nearly 2 hours with me teaching me how to be prepared for success. You see, and here's the message here. No one, literally no one, can be successful by themselves. So that librarian, and one thing I remember, she showed me this article. I think it was from the Harvard Business Review, and it was on something, I'm going to date myself here, called microfiche. You guys, all right, you guys never heard that, but it's kind of like, think of it as a jump drive, like back in the day. But Sharon, you must remember microfiche, that's why you're laughing here. But this article, and I still have it to this very day, really taught you how to be successful in college. And the most important lesson that that article gave me was a formula. You know, there's always a formula to get something done. There's a process that you must follow in order to be successful. But more importantly, it helped me get over my fear. I thought I was going to fail. But you got your smartphones again? I want you to write this down. It's probably relevant to what you're doing right now. There's only 2 lessons. Here's a formula. For every 1 credit hour in class, you will need 3 hours of outside class study, 1-to-3 ratio. I now have my success plan. With 21 credits, 7 classes, that meant a total of 84 hours of class and study time for me. I was now very, very clear about the level of sacrifice that I would need to make. The second major lesson, and this is the one that I have used in everything that I've done since leaving college, is that it talked about the fact that success demands organization. There is no success if you're not organized and prepared. And here's what it said. It recommended that students needed to have a written daily plan that details every single minute of every single day. Now imagine, as a 19-year-old college student, you want me to write down what I'm going to do every single. I can't remember what I did 5 minutes ago. But I now knew exactly what I had to do. But most importantly, I was prepared and willing to make that level of sacrifice. So I went back to my room and I planned out every single minute of every single day, including when I went to Martin Hall for meals. I understand it's not there anymore. I planned out when I went to class, when I had to study, and even when I went to the Powell building for free time. Now that semester, I never attended, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I never attended a single party, never visited the bars on Main Street. I even got permission to stay in Commonwealth dorm during the Thanksgiving break. Now, what were my results? I finished that semester with like a 2.98 something, completed 39 credit hours in that year with a combined GPA, as I mentioned, but I graduated as planned. Now, I didn't get a 4.0, and I told you, I'm not smarter than you, and I didn't claim to be a genius, but I got through it. Now, what did I learn about that? The value and importance of preparation, which I put into practice right here at EKU, has guided the way I've approached personally every challenge and every opportunity that I've faced since. But let me tell you something, and you will notice this in your own life. It's sad that many people that I've encountered, and I'm sure you've encountered, seem to have known their purpose. They seem to have been prepared. I mean, they went to college, they got their degrees, they did everything they were supposed to do, yet they never, ever reached their level of success. Why is that? In my opinion, I think the reason that most people fail to accomplish their goals is directly related to 2 very powerful things, and I'm sure you've heard these 2 as well. But in my life, these are the 2 things that I've seen as the most impactful in terms of adversely affecting your ability to get your goals done. Excuses. Excuses and fear. Please remember that. You're going to be confronted with that the moment you walk across that stage and get your degree, and it's time for you to perform. Let's first consider excuses. I got to tell you, I know excuses well. I've claimed more than most of you put together in this room. Excuses are very easy to accept and believe, but they're so difficult to reject and forget. I have a long and deep relationship, Dean Erickson, with excuses. And I'm going to tell you about the one that early in my career paralyzed me the most. And I'm sure we've all heard this one. My circumstances. My circumstances. Now, I know that no one in this room has ever claimed any excuses, so I'm not talking to you. But let me tell you about myself. Let me give you some of my go-to oldies but goodies. Here are a few. I don't have money. No one will help me. No one will help me. It's not fair. It's not fair. I'm a minority. They are smarter than me. they have connections that I don't. I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I went to EKU. The professor, this doesn't happen here, is racist and Marxist. And finally, in my case, I'm just too fat. Well, actually, that one's true, but we're gonna move past it. But they're all excuses. They're just excuses. Personally, in my life, what I've come to believe is that there's no such thing as excuses. They're only decisions that you make. The fact is that the only person on this planet that can block your success is sitting in this room, and it's you. In other words, your circumstances can never be an excuse. Let me tell you my favorite quote about excuses and my circumstances. Listen to this and write this down. Your focus determines your reality, not your circumstances. You know who said that? George Lucas, creator of Star Wars. Google him. See the story of what he went through to write Star Wars. It's absolutely a miracle that that movie was ever made. Now, I hope you read it, and I hope you always remember it. But let's turn to the big one. Here's the big one. Fear. And I call this the ultimate dream killer. Nothing has killed more dreams than fear. I strongly believe that the single greatest opponent to success is fear. However, from my own point of view, I've come to know that if you have purpose in your life, if you know your why, you can and you will overcome fear. I believe that fear is necessary, folks. Remember that. Fear is necessary. Fear makes you focus. Overcoming fear hardens your resolve and makes you resilient. Now, most people, as you all know, have a deep sense and a fear of failure, right? Would you agree with me? Most people fear failure. But the irony is that failure is necessary. To have success, you absolutely must fail. There's no exception to this rule, and don't you ever look for one. Some of my personal greatest failures have become my greatest lessons, which led to my greatest successes. So I will tell you that you should embrace failure, but don't be paralyzed by it. Learn from it, and you get up and you move on. Now, I can tell by some of the expressions around this room, listening to me, you look kind of skeptical. You may believe that what I'm telling you is a tired old cliche you've heard a million times. And I understand that point of view. But let me give you a few concrete historical examples. And please write these down. These are from some of the most successful people ever in the history of this planet. How many people have heard of Henry Ford? That's it? Henry Ford declared bankruptcy twice. Now, please keep in mind that declaring bankruptcy in the late 1800s was the societal equivalent of having AIDS in the 1980s. You were a scourge to society. For our finance people, you know that what I'm saying is true. But despite this, declaring bankruptcy twice, having 5 kids of his own, being broke and penniless, Henry Ford attempted to start yet a third company. This was unprecedented because no one would lend Henry money. No one. So what did he do? Do you think he quit? Obviously he didn't. He entered a car race to raise the money that he needed to start his third company. But here was one small problem. He had never raced a car in his life. But what did he do? He prepared for months. He knew his purpose, and he confronted his fear. In fact, when he officially entered that race in 1901 against a professional driver, no less, here's what the news media said about him. They mocked him and they ridiculed him as a sad and failed man, simply trying to make a buck. But guess what? He won that race. And you know what he did with his prize money? He founded his third and final company. You may have heard of it, the Ford Motor Company. Now keep in mind that the male life expectancy in the U.S. in 1901 was just 47 years. That's it, 47 years. Now in today's term, that accomplishment is the equivalent of founding Apple at the age of 70. Don't tell me there's never time to start over. In fact, at one point in the 19th and 20th century, not only was Henry Ford the richest man in the world, he was the richest man in the history of the world. And to this very day, think about this, to this very day, Henry Ford is ranked by Forbes magazine as the 9th richest person in the history of the world. You don't have the right to have an excuse. So don't talk to me about excuses. Now let me give you 2 more examples very quickly. How many have heard of Alexander Graham Bell? Few of you. Now he had literally thousands upon thousands upon thousands of failed experiments. In fact, at one point, the US Patent Office threatened not to accept any more patent applications from him. When asked because they thought he was just doing busy work. So a reporter got wind of this and he asked him, Henry, why do you keep doing this when you keep failing? You know what he said? And I've never forgotten this when I heard this quote. Quote, the only difference between success and failure is the ability to take action after you fail. Right? Think about that. You see, most people, when they fail, they come to a complete and utter stop the first time, and they never try again. Let me give you one last example, and I'm sure all of you have heard of this guy. How many have heard of Michael Jordan? Okay, a few more people. Now, MJ is not only recognized as the best basketball player in the history of the NBA, but this is important. He is also considered to be the best clutch player performing under pressure in the history of the NBA. But when you talk to the average person, most people believe that he never failed. And let me tell you, it's not true. Michael Jordan, quote, said that early in his career, he was trusted to take 26 regular season game-winning shots, and he missed every single one of them. He said at the time that he was glad that he failed so many times because he learned something from every single failure. But guess what? In a Game 7, Michael Jordan never missed a game-winning shot and won 6 NBA championships during that time. So what's my message here? Folks, no great accomplishment has ever been achieved without failing first. So students, don't be afraid of failure. If you can overcome your fear, there's absolutely nothing that you can't accomplish. Now, given my bio, and thank you for reading my bio here, I know that some of you are thinking, well, what about the people who win the lottery, right? They didn't have to prepare. They didn't have a purpose. They didn't have to persevere in order to be successful. What about them? Well, Vivian, I'm glad you asked me that question since I happen to be involved in a U.S. lottery contract. But here's what you need to know. First of all, the odds of winning the lottery, and I'm probably going to lose my lottery contract for saying this now that I think about it, the odds of winning the lottery, the jackpot, are approximately 1 in 300 million against you. Okay? Secondly, even if you win that jackpot, 70%, say it with me, 70% of all jackpot winners since they created Powerball and Mega Millions go bankrupt within 5 years. Within just 5 years. There are no shortcuts to success, people, for anyone, not for you and not for me. So don't look for it. Now let me get to my final P. Who remembers that one? This is a test. It's perseverance. Now, in my humble opinion, this is the most important one for me. The single most important ability or character trait or battle armor, as I like to call it, is the ability to persevere. Folks, bad things happen to good people. Life isn't fair. Don't expect it to be. I got to tell you, I've been passed over for promotions that I knew I earned, that I deserved. I've been unfairly profiled by police, department stores, hotels. I've been rejected for jobs, business opportunities, loans. I mean, the list goes on and on. In fact, I've been passed over by cab drivers from here to D.C., from D.C. to New York, from New York to California. I mean, thank God for Uber, right? Thank God for Uber. I love Uber. Now, what's the point here? The point is that you must be resilient. You must be willing to get back up. I mean, we're all going to fall down, but I'm going to tell you, not every one of your colleagues and friends and family members are going to get back up when they fail. You must persevere when the day is the darkest, when your friends betray you, when your family disappoints you, when life has simply been unfair. Now let's listen to the actual definition, the Webster's definition of perseverance, because I believe it tells you everything that you need to know. Write this down, please. Here's the definition of perseverance: the continued effort to do or to achieve something despite difficulties, failure, or opposition. Yet when most people encounter difficulties, failure, or opposition, like the word no, they come to a complete and utter stop. The word no, people, is the most effective barrier to success that has ever existed in humankind. So let me tell you, you're here for a reason. If you're trying to achieve anything of value, you are going to be confronted with the word no, far more than you will ever hear the word yes. There are no exceptions to this. It's going to happen to you. Trust me, I'm a witness. Let me tell you another quote that has really motivated me about the word and the feeling of rejection in the word no. And I want you to write this down. Here it is. Rejection is simply God's way of telling you wrong direction. Rejection is simply God's way of telling you wrong direction. Now you should know, and Vivian and Katie and Jim, you would agree with this, that the word no is and remains to this very day the most frequent answer that we get when we're going after new business. And that's a fact. I'm going to give you one quick example. My first government contract was with the General Services Administration. Now, it took me over 1 year to get that first contract. Now, guess how much, after a year of hearing no, guess how much that first contract was? $1,700. $1,700. Now, I had done my homework before I approached GSA. I was prepared. I read their annual budget that they submitted to Congress. I went to all of their small business opportunity open houses. I paid a professional to create my capability statement of services. I sent emails to every single contracting officer or project manager that I could get my hands on. And guess what happened? Nothing. Nada. No response, no return phone calls, no return emails. Now, after several months of this, I attended a small business industry day at GSA, and that's where you go when you're trying to get new business. And I got the business cards of one of the top contracting officers at GSA. Everyone knew his name. I mean, he had a very large portfolio and tens of millions of dollars that he could award himself, and everyone knew him. Now, he gave me some very encouraging news when I met with him. How to do business with the GSA. He told me he was very impressed with me and my company. And he gave me his card and told me to call. I mean, at that point, I was so excited. I mean, I knew the millions were going to be rolling in. I was looking at new cars and houses and everything that I was going to buy because of all this money that was going to be rolling in. But after that industry day, and despite me calling him 2 to 3 times a week, I sent him emails and company brochures. He never, ever responded. 11 months passed, and still he wouldn't respond to any communication from me. So finally, after I sent him one of these kind of, hey, I'm just touching base with you emails. He called me the next day, and I was shocked. I saw his name and phone number coming in. I said, oh my God, the GSA officer is calling me. I told everybody to be quiet. I got to take this call. And in my very professional voice, I said, hello, this is Emmanuel Bailey. Here's what he said. Mr. Bailey, I understand that you want to do business with the GSA. Your company is a startup. You have no past performance or experience. I have hundreds, literally hundreds of experienced firms at my fingertips. We are not going to do business with you anytime in the future. I was absolutely devastated. In fact, as I remember this, I was literally near tears. But I composed myself just enough to say to him, "Sir, I understand. But would you mind if occasionally I sent you email updates as we got more experience and gained more contracts?" The instant I said this, I could hear the tone of his voice. He was so frustrated that I said that. And here's what he said to me. "Fine," click. Hung the phone up. But I did what I told him I was going to do. I still sent him my capability statement with any minor updates that I could find. I probably was making some of them up. But I sent it to him once a month. And guess what, folks? He never responded. Not one time did he respond to me. But I continued. Because what did I do? I followed what I told him I would do. And I continued. Now, months later, I'll never forget this. On the 4th of July, I was on my way to the airport. I was actually going out of town for 4th of July vacation. Guess who called me the minute I entered the airport? That's right, it was the GSA contracting officer. Same guy who had totally disrespected me, totally ignored me. And I was shocked. I was so confused. Why is this guy calling me? So I answered the phone. He says, "Is this Mr. Bailey?" And I said, "Yes, this is he." And he proceeded to tell me that he had an emergency and wanted to know if I would help him. Now you can imagine at this point, I'm totally shocked and I was confused. Why would he need my help? He's got thousands and thousands of qualified firms to help him. Well, guess what? What he proceeded to tell me was that the administrator of GSA, who's appointed by the President of the United States, needed to have a small job completed in their office, and it had to be done by 8 a.m. Saturday morning. Now, this was Friday at 5 p.m. when he called me, and I was in Dulles Airport. And he went on to tell me that this job, the only value of it was less than $2,000. But it was a highly specialized job, and reading your capability statement, I think you can do the job. I know you wanted a job for me. You've been calling me for months. Here's your opportunity. Now, he told me that guess what? He couldn't get in touch with a single one of his current vendors, the ones that he had literally given millions upon millions of dollars to, and he was running out of time. So guess what I learned later? Not a single one of his current vendors wanted that job. Guess what they said to him? No. They were making millions. Why would they do a small job on a major holiday weekend, 4th of July, with no pre-notice and for less than $2,000? Now, he went on to tell me that if I did this job for him, he would consider it a huge, huge favor, one that he wouldn't soon forget. So finally, he asked me, "Can you do this job for me and get me out of a bind?" Now, I got to be honest with you, I hesitated. I was so offended that after all my efforts to do business with him, he calls me when he literally couldn't get anyone else on a 4th of July weekend. I was going to lose my plane ticket, my vacation, for $1,700. My ego got in the way. And you know what I said to him? Absolutely, I'll do this job. I'll get it done by 8 a.m. Saturday morning. Now, guess what happened? That $1,700 job led to a $4.5 million non-compete contract with the GSA less than 6 months later. Now, it is important to know that that job, that $4.5 million job, that was scheduled to be awarded to one of the companies that said no to him on the 4th of July. So don't be fooled by the word no. Don't be fooled by the word no. Perseverance will break down any obstacle and any barrier that you will ever confront in life. So let me end by telling you to remember my mom's 3 P's. Purpose, you guys can say it with me. Purpose, preparation, and perseverance. Nadine Erickson, I realize this is Black History Month, and I'm so thankful for you and the university and Dr. Benson for having these ceremonies. It's really encouraging to me as an alumni member to come back and participate in it. And I'm so encouraged by the diversity and inclusion for a school that I love. But given the fact that it's Black History Month, I believe that it's very important for me to share with you, in my opinion, the most compelling and profound examples of perseverance that I personally know. When you consider the historical circumstances of black people around the world, would you agree with me that it is a safe, very safe and reasonable assumption that the most frequent word that our forefathers and mothers heard was the word no? Is that a reasonable assumption? We are proud descendants of a people enslaved for over 600 years, not just here in America, but all around the world, including Asia. I bet you didn't know that there were African slaves in Japan, in China, and in Russia. But despite that very bleak and dark history, did you know that right at this very minute, there are 12 black billionaires in the world? 3 are women, and all are self-made. The simple fact that I stand before you right now, the fact that you are enrolled here at EKU, is living proof that our ancestors, against all odds, knew their purpose, were prepared for anything, and persevered against everything. And most importantly, they didn't give a damn about the word no. So let me close my remarks. I've so enjoyed my time with you today. Thank you for having me. I hope to be invited back. We'll see how that turns out. But that's my story. Sharon, you asked me to tell my story.
Thank you very much.
You've heard my story as best as I can tell it. And I haven't held much back. But my story is coming to an end. My story is coming to an end. How's your story going to end? How's your story going to end? The only person in this room that can determine that is you. So let's get it done. Thank you. God bless you. God bless EKU. God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you. What a story. What a story.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you for introducing me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Manuel, thanks so much for your story. There's the president of the Rhode Island School of Design wrote a little book called Redesigning Leadership. And in that book, he says stories trump statistics. And as a dean who uses statistics all the time, I just want to, stories do trump statistics. Stories are things that students remember, and that we always talk about EKU, it's our stories and the stories of our alums. That's what attracts new students. That's what really facilitates the corporate alliances and the opportunities for internships, co-ops, and launching careers for these young people. And so thanks so much for your story. We loved it.
Thank you so
It's
much.
a wonderful story.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
all
Thank
the
you all.
students are gonna persevere.
Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any questions.
So, if anyone, a question or two, we've got time for a question or two. If you'd like to ask Manuel a question, please go ahead.
This is EKU. Don't be shy. I went here. I know how we are. Anyone?
I have a question. What is your day-to-day life in your current business?
Wow, what an interesting question. In fact, I did introduce you guys, but they're probably in a better position to tell you because I create a lot of chaos. Our platform, our business platform, really expands from federal government clients to commercial clients. And when you're in the lottery business, particularly, and Vivian and Katie, you guys can talk more about this, it's a very hectic, very chaotic, change on the dime type of business because we're consumer facing. So we're trying to determine the wins and wants and needs of our customer base. And in DC, that's really a challenge because in DC, and the reason why I tell you it's a challenge is that DC is bordered by Maryland and Virginia. So it's a city where 600,000 residents that live there, but it swells every single day by 600,000 commuters. And we get 50 million tourists a year. So imagine for these guys trying to design products that will meet the needs, wants, and desires of that very disparate, very different customer base. So my particular day may start out at, I'm rarely, in bed after about 4:30 a.m. I'm probably sending out emails right around that time. I'm taking probably my first phone call, probably like 7:30, and then I'm off to, I work in what we call the 3-letter agency space. So I have contracts with CIA, DISA, NSA, all the ones you've been hearing in the news right now. So they get up early, 3-star generals, when you're working with them, their meetings start no later than 7:15. Then we go from there, and I have other federal government agencies that we work with. And Vivian and Katie, who knows about, what our day is with the lottery business, because it changes so frequently. So being prepared for change and being able to kind of manage a difficult schedule is, very, very key. Thank you for that. Anyone else?
As far as like preparation goes, are there any like books or authors that you recommend like reading to, help prepare yourself and reading success stories?
Have you read Jack Welch's first book? Just Google it. It's his very first book on leadership. And I read that book, it must have been in probably mid-90s. And what I appreciate, its title escapes me right now, but that book, because in GE, they really changed the way that employees were assessed, how they approached businesses, how they determined what the value proposition would be. And in that book, it really told you how you needed to differentiate yourself from all, because imagine GE, they were hiring nothing but Harvard and Ivy League grads and all of that. But what they would do every year is they would rank everybody, top to bottom, and the bottom 10% they would just fire. So in that book, it talked about what are the things that you needed to do in order to be prepared. And so I would definitely recommend that you read that book. Jack Welch, not the second book, I didn't like that one as much, but if you read his first book, it's very impressive, and that gives you a roadmap. Yes, winning, yes. Thank you for that. That's why you're in the Kentucky legislature and right now working, and I'm not. Thank you for that question.
Actually, if I can just have follow on, that's a great question. I would say this to all students
great
starting
question.
your career. One of the things that I do is whenever I meet with someone, I ask them what they've been reading lately.
Absolutely.
So for example, this came up.
We were talking about this earlier.
Yeah. So Jim Geis, you all are probably too young to remember Jim Geis, but he was Coach Kidd's quarterback of the 60s, back when nobody could beat EKU on the football field. And Jim went off and had a great career in business and the like. But he was on campus about a month ago, and he was talking about a book he just read called Traction. So come up to my office, you'll see the book. I got it from Amazon. I got it through Amazon. I haven't read it yet, but I always like to know what people are reading if you want to be a business leader, because number one, it's not just going to help you, but it's going to help you as you network and talk. So we talk about what have we read lately?
Right, we were talking about that. In fact, Dean, if you don't mind,
Go ahead.
the other thing I would add, literally, and I mean this, anything by Steve Covey. Stephen Covey, you got to read anything that he's written. One of the ones that I really appreciate was What Got You Here Won't Keep You Here. You got to read that one. That's really, really impressive book.
I want to add one point. Your story is amazing, and it
Thank you.
reminds me of the movie of Pursuit of Happiness.
Yes.
If I am the movie producer, I could contact you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Too bad I didn't get a contract for that, bro. Thank you.
Well, listen, let's give Emmanuel one more round of applause.
Thank you all. Thank you. Dean, thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and all you EKU colonels, this is what you can be. All you got to do is
Better
do
than
the
me.
3 Ps.
Better than me.
Thanks so much, everyone.